Good afternoon, the 900.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Check my license, please.
Thank you.
Some mail in here.
Yes, there is some.
Ah, you on the 900? Yes, Bob Williams, the name. From Hore. How'd you do?
Oh, nice to meet you,
Nice to
Brian.
meet you. Aha, my page it now. What's our routing today, Brian?
Frankfurt, Rome, Beirut.
It should be pleasant. What's the temperature there now?
Oh, it's about 80. I've done that a fortnight ago.
Still swimming. Chain and get some sunshine.
Very pleasant.
I'll get a torch.
Yeah, that'll paddle, I think.
One paddle, please. Good afternoon, sir.
How'd you do? Walpole on the 900. Afternoon, sir. First officer Walpole.
How'd you do? We haven't flown together before, have we?
Nope, we have not.
The engineer.
Oh, yes, he's...
Oh, Bob Leadham.
Yep, it's him.
Hello, Bob.
Captain. Nice to meet you again.
Long time.
A pilot is by no means a bus driver. Before every flight, he has to make certain basic decisions, and these decisions he arrives at through looking at the weather situation and by judging the overall picture in the light of his own experience. This is something that cannot be delegated to people on the ground, and I think it's true to say that no two pilots would even regard a particular weather situation through exactly the same eyes.
I have checked the alternates for Frankfurt. They are, in fact, Paris and London.
Jolly good.
Good afternoon. Oh, Le Breton.
How do you do, sir?
How are you?
I've checked the flight plan. Just the fuel figure we need now, sir.
Yes, right. Now, you told me on the telephone this morning that visibilities around Europe are fairly low.
Here, in fact, are the actual forecast landing conditions.
Let's look at it in detail. Frankfurt destination. Well, that's reasonable, isn't it?
Not too bad.
Well, alternates in case we can't get in there. London as a return alternate. 550 yards. I don't like these conditions of a high over Europe like this, you know, in the winter. This 550 yards is an approximation, I would say. I wouldn't like to trust it. Paris, 220 yards. Amsterdam.
Only 20% of a captain's workload is actually flying the aircraft. 20% he holds in reserve for emergencies. 60% of his workload making decisions. No matter how carefully a flight is planned, conditions are constantly varying.
Now, you had a look at Rome for me. I see the weather's all right down there.
Yes, sir, we have, in fact, worked out a figure using Rome as the alternate.
Yes, I see. We require 6,700 kilos of fuel to get there from Frankfurt.
Yes, that's right, sir.
And are we all right for takeoff from here?
Yes, the load out of London is 9,800 kilos, and assuming a maximum landing weight of 93,000 at Frankfurt.
It's not just simply a question of filling the Boeing up, because if we were to do this, she takes 73 tons of fuel. And with all this fuel on board, we cannot land the aircraft because the undercarriage wouldn't stand this weight. We have to burn off at least 50 tons of fuel before landing.
The sort of things we have to think of are takeoff weight, landing weight. These depend on runway lengths. Then we have cruising height, fuel needed for diversion, and the normal safety margins. The total fuel carried is entirely the captain's responsibility.
Now that's going to give us a total fuel of 28,700.
28,700. Yes, sir.
Plus 850
Plus
for
850.
taxiing. Any trouble with the distribution, Bob?
What is the burn-off? Can I just see? 8,000. I think perhaps we'd better make this non-standard fuel loading and be safe and put 2,000 kilograms in the center tank.
Yes. All right, we'll make it that then.
your attention, please. B.O.A.C. announced the departure of their Boeing 707 jet service BA900 to Frankfurt, Rome, Beirut, New Delhi, Bangkok, and Hong Kong. Would passengers please collect their hand baggage, have their boarding passes ready, and proceed along the airside corridor to gate P1 for embarkation. This announcement is for all passengers traveling on B.O.A.C. service BA900. Passengers are requested not to smoke outside this building. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Come on. Right, you ready for checklist?
Standing by, when you're ready.
Okay.
I'll just check my oxygen.
Sure.
Everything's okay outside.
Okay, stand by for check.
Ready when you're ready, Brian.
Roger, pre-flight check.
Completed.
Gearlocks and covers.
On board.
Hydraulics, clearance pressurized coming up. Ground, clearance pressurized hydraulics, please. Okay. Library bags.
On board.
Oxygen, gentlemen, please.
On check, 100%.
On and 100% checked here. PGH recorder.
On.
All circuit breakers.
Are in.
Fire shutoffs.
Full forward.
Fire test.
Bell and lights check.
Very far.
Normal.
Boost pumps.
Mains on, lights out.
Engine fuel valves.
All open.
Flow meters.
Zeroed.
Cabin pressure controls.
Auto inset.
Air conditioning units.
Off.
Wing valves.
Open.
Some people still think of the pilot as a daredevil aviator of the pioneering age. Civil air transport is big business, and the pilot is an executive in this industry. When I get into my 707, I'm sitting at my desk. The cockpit is an office, and it flies with me.
And the pre-start check is completed, Tom. Good. See if we can get startup clearance from control, and we'll carry out the startup check. Roger, sir, coming up. London ground, jet speed bird 900, requesting startup clearance, over.
Speedbird 900 is now clear to start, over.
900, roger. Okay, being cleared to start. Hello, ground. Recheck the chocks are in position, please. Fire guard posted, engines clear, gearlocks and covers have been removed, please. Roger, pressurize the manifold, please. Windows port side, please, sir. Closed and locked. Closed and locked. Starboard heat's on low. Beacon is on. Auxiliary pumps.
All right.
The thrust levers are closed. Door warning lights are out and checked. Clear to start.
We are pressurized.
All right, number 3. Okay, 3 it is, ground.
Right. Starting 3, now. Green light 3. Starting 4, now.
4 it is, ground.
Green light 4. Starting 2, now.
2 it is, ground.
Green light 2. I've finished the ground electrics, Brian.
Take the ground electrics away, please.
Starting 1, now.
1 it is.
Green light. Green light.
equipment. Okay, ground, they're all going. All ground equipment away, please, and signals from the front. Thank you and good day. Engine anti-icing. Off, please. Off. Air truck is going away. Central power. On three. External power. Removed. Hydraulic interconnect valve. Checked and closed. Hydraulic pumps on. Pressures. Brake gauges are checked. Chocks have gone away. Starting check complete, sir. Good. Get taxi clearance. Taxi clearance coming up.
Underground, jet speed bird 900, taxi clearance over.
Jet speed bird 900, taxi to the east for the holding point 28 right, over.
To the east, 28 right, 900.
Okay, that's 28 right, sir. All right. Brakes off. Clear this side. Brakes checked. Start levers 4 in idle, flap master switch guard closed, flaps are selected, speed brakes 0, trimmers set to takeoff 1, 2, 3, flying controls please. Alright, the rudder's free. Ailerons, elevators, rudders have been checked, stabilizer mark should cut out to normal, the brake is off. Flight instruments please, and left and right turn. Turning right. Okay, and the right turn this side. All right, this side, turning left. And then check this side and the left. Check this side too. Flight instruments then are checked and set. Flight director off and captain's control. Anti-skid guard closed. Rudder boost guard closed. Reverse, please. Reverse coming up. All reverse check. Generators, please. Parallel, lights out. Oil pressures and temperatures. On normal. Boost pumps. Mains on, lights out. Fuel pressures. Normal. Fuel heaters. Checked. And closed. Air conditioning units. On. Engine bleeds. All off. Flaps, 2 sets of 30, 2 leading edge, and 30 selected. Down to the line, I'll get the ATC clearance. Yes. London jet speed bird 900, heavy wire ATC clearance, over.
Speedbird 900 is cleared to Frankfurt, Upper Green 1, to cross Epsom at 3, Morling 4000, climb when instructed by radar to maintain 230. Over.
The layman doesn't appreciate what a precise operation the takeoff is. It doesn't start on the runway, it doesn't even start in the office where the preliminary calculations are made. It starts in the small back rooms of the mathematicians, and it's processed through the national and international airworthiness authorities. Everything which can happen is taken care of in one of 3 ways. If it's something which can be measured, like temperature and wind, it will be measured. If it's something immeasurable, like the slowness of the undercarriage to retract, a margin will be put in for it. If it's a colossal failure, like the loss of power of one engine, it will be assumed that this loss occurs at the worst possible moment during the takeoff, and the flight will be planned so that it can continue safely without this power.
Takeoff check is completed, sir, and we're cleared to go.
Good. The drill will be standard on this takeoff. Okay.
Understood, sir.
Understood. Off we go.
Sides. 100 knots. V1. Rotates. V2. V2 plus 10. You're up. Gears coming in. feet. 20 flap. 20 flap. 1,000 feet. 95%. 95. Noise abatement time. 93. 93.
There is no doubt in my mind that American airplanes are better than British. Pilots who've been on the American run have been exposed to the greatest air transport industry in the world, and they know just how efficient operators and manufacturers can be. They detest the chauvinism which surrounds the British aircraft industry. If we make a good product, let us praise it. But let's not praise it just because we built it. During the war, we had a campaign about wishful thinking. We have to get rid of the wishful thinking in the aircraft industry if Britain is ever going to succeed.
Some pilots are pro-American. I feel this is because they've probably flown American aircraft for a long time. My feeling is, having flown both types, that we have the best brains and we can build the best aircraft.
Of course, all the aircraft used by BEA are British built. Most of them were tailor-made for our purposes, and they've served us well.
I believe that we should use the very best equipment available. Now, whether it is produced in Russia or in America or Timbuktu, that doesn't matter.
I know there is a very vociferous body of British pilots who are pro-American. They think the Americans are the only people who can build aeroplanes. American aeroplanes have their faults like any other aeroplanes, but these pilots blind themselves to the fact that there are any faults. And I'd like to remind them that it was a British modification requested by the British Air Registration Board, which made the Boeing 707 a very much better flying machine than it was originally. And I know American pilots who thank us for it.
Bird 900, line up control, go ahead now. Right, Nature, speak about 900 over Alna at 58230, estimating Spank Darlin at 05. Bird 900, line Roger, clear to Charlie via Spank Darlin NDB on redisarm at the line main range, over.
I think when one is flying the airways in densely populated areas, there's the continual feeling at the back of a pilot's mind that other aircraft are in the vicinity. The air traffic control systems are quite good, and there's no doubt in my mind that the best in the world is over the United Kingdom.
Pakistan 703, descend now to 3,000 feet. The QNH 1004 millibars, the temperature +6, report leaving 60.
1004, leaving 60 for 3,000.
Thank you, 703.
London Airport, Bravo, Hotel Romeo Oscar, good evening.
Good evening, Air France Romeo Oscar. Have you passed Sevenoaks?
We are passing Sevenoaks now.
Roger, continue towards Epsom, direct our position. You radar to the ILS 28 left, over.
Right turn or left turn?
Right turn, please.
Yeah.
Right off.
Foxtrot Romeo Oscar, turn right now, heading 090.
Romeo Oscar, turning 090, Roger.
Foxtrot Romeo Oscar, descend now to 3,000 feet. The London QNH 1004 millibars, temperature +5, report leaving 6.
Romeo Oscar, leaving 60.
Foxtrot Bravo Hotel Romeo Oscar, parallel 090 to 3,000.
Good evening, Romeo Oscar. Continue heading 090, your number 3 in traffic.
Roger.
The pilot's view on air traffic control is that there should be positive separation. That is, that the airliner should be in a block of airspace in which, by control through the ground, he is positively separated from every other aeroplane. But alongside this principle of positive separation, there is another, the see and be seen principle. And this is advocated mainly by the military authorities and by the private pilots. But the see and be seen principle doesn't hold up with modern jet speeds. A bullet leaving a Smith & Wesson .38 revolver has a muzzle velocity of about 600 miles an hour. Two jet airliners moving towards one another head-on have a closing speed of nearly double that. Have you tried dodging any bullets?
The principle of see and be seen at altitude is just not on. Apart from the closing speed of the aircraft at that altitude, there is an optical reason. In fact, if you're looking out of an aircraft at 35,000 feet or more, you may think you're looking into the distance, but it's a medical fact that you're looking about this distance in front of you, 3 to 4 feet, and your eyes are at rest. It's because you've got no background reference. There's nothing to tie the picture to, and it's almost impossible to spot another aeroplane at these altitudes unless it's trailing or unless the sun flashes on the wings.
Right, here's the range. Will you report, please? Roger, Sam. Frankfurt, jet speed bird 900 over the range at this time. 4,000 feet, turning onto 100 and descending to 3,000, over.
Roger.
Right, can we have the field approach check, please? Field approach check's coming up, sir. Here's approach check, please. Checking. Brake pressure, Sergeant. Checked. Flaps. Standing by the flaps, sir. Right, 20 now. 20 flaps going out. And 30. 30 flaps. Cheers. Speed brakes are 0. Radars to stand by.
Speedbird 900, turn left heading 310. Continue descent to altitude 2,000 feet. Report passing 3,000, over.
Roger, jet speedbird 900 is turning on to 310, descending to 2,000 feet. We'll check out a 3.
The standard of air traffic control varies considerably throughout the world. In the United Kingdom, it is good, but in certain overseas countries, it's not so good. With the introduction of more and more high-speed aircraft, something has to be done.
Right, will you report that we're on the localizer? Will they monitor it, please? Roger. Frankfurt, jet speedbird 900 on the localizer, requesting monitored approach.
Roger, you need not acknowledge any further information. Your range 7.5 miles from touchdown. 400 feet left of on course.
Anti-icing checked off. Yes, off.
300 feet left.
Yes, checked. Locked down, 3 green lights and 4 releases. Hydraulic pressures. Check here. And the landing check is complete, but full flat, sir.
250 left. 200 left. 150 left. 100 left. Drifting to the left. 200 feet left now. 250 left. Coming up to the glide slope.
I can't have full flap now. Full flap's going out, sir. Tell me when you see the runway. Roger.
Range 1 mile from touchdown.
Runway ahead, sir. Good. Speed brakes. Anti-skid. Speed heat 2 off, Q heat 1 off. Checked. Window heat.
When I started flying 30 years ago, I would never have believed that today I would be approaching to land in a Boeing 707 at 160 miles an hour with 150 passengers. In those days, approach speeds were about half the speed they are now, and insidiously, like a creeping disease, over the years they've crept up 10 knots at a time until we've reached the sort of speeds we're at now. We did hold these speeds with the Comet 4. In fact, it reduced the speed by about 5 knots on a Stratocruiser. And now, with the VC-10, we've cut back these speeds by 20 knots. And this is a very significant factor in the safety of future operations. Indeed, the critical phases of any flight are the takeoff and the landing. Modern aircraft being what they are, these operations are covered by a standard technique. Very often the crew will never have met each other before, and it would be impossible if they had to get used to each other's idiosyncrasies.
Let's speed bird 901. Right, start levers for an idle, flap master switch guard closed, flaps have been selected, the speed brakes are 0. Trimmers, 1 on there. Do you want this left as it is? I'll leave it as it is. You're number 2 for takeoff?
Yes.
Right, straight ahead, sir, straight ahead.
During the takeoff run, the captain is concentrating hard on keeping the aircraft straight by steering with the hand wheel, which controls the nose wheel, and by keeping the aircraft straight with his feet, controlling the rudder. At the same time, he's listening like mad to the speeds that the first officer is calling out, because upon these speeds depend certain vital decisions. The first officer will call out 85, 95, 105, something of that order, and then he will say, V1, rotate. The significance of V1 is that up to that point, the captain could still abandon the takeoff by closing the throttles and bringing the aircraft to a halt in the runway available. When he calls rotate, this is a signal to the captain that he must pull back on the control column and haul the plane off the ground.
But all the lights are on. All clear, Jack. Brake off. Airspeed both sides. 100 knots. Microphone. V1, rotate. Gear up there. V2, gears coming in. V2 plus 10.
The aircraft leaves the ground at approximately V2, which is the minimum speed at which it can be safely kept straight in the air with one engine failed. On some aircraft, the V1 speed, rotation, and V2 may be called in very quick succession, entailing some pretty quick decision-making if something should go wrong during that phase. Now, these speeds all vary according to the length of the runway in use at the time and the weight of the aircraft for that particular takeoff, and each has to be calculated for this particular takeoff.
For years, the aviation industry has been satisfied with an accident rate of something like 1 passenger fatality per 100 million passenger miles. This rate is compared favorably with other forms of transportation. But the pilots haven't been satisfied. And recently, Bo.A.C, the great Swedish aeronautical authority, pointed out that if passenger miles continue to rise as they have done in the past, we shall finish up by having, in a few years, 1 accident a week. There is a growing recognition that this is totally unacceptable, and something has to be done about it. But it's a very difficult problem.
One always tries to improve on safety with every new type of aircraft, and in fact we succeed. But you must remember that there is no form of transportation which is 100% safe. The only way to achieve this is to lock the aircraft in the hangar, the car in its garage, don't use a bicycle, and don't even walk, because you're just as likely to get killed.
It's my burning feeling that safety, as far as the aircraft are concerned, couldn't be bettered. This is good. The pilot's checks and the general overhaul and safety standards on aircraft are excellent. Where I think one could do more is as far as airport facilities are concerned.
From an air traffic control point of view, Great Britain is well provided for. But when it comes to airfields, we only have 2 first-class airfields, namely London Airport and Prestwick. In this respect, we compare with a small country like Switzerland.
We need more snow clearance equipment or even heated runways. Let-down aids could be better. They're good here, but they could be better right throughout the world. We need more radar let-downs to cope with these problems. So this is the answer to that. More on the ground. We're doing quite well in the air.
Right. Stand by, will you? Navigator?
Yes, sir?
Beirut informed me that the navigator who should be going on with this aeroplane to Delhi is sick.
Oh, no.
Most of the time, the actual physical flying is done by the automatic pilot. But the human pilot has got to be constantly on the ball, watching the autopilot, checking the progress of the flight, making decisions. You can never really relax. In fact, the number of hours we fly are strictly limited by law.
How's your copy, Captain? Ah, good, good. That's the last one you're going to get before we get to Beirut. Thank you. It is, too. Yeah, thank you. It's rough luck about the nav having to go all the way through to Delhi. It's a long day. Did they say what was wrong with the navigator in Beirut who went sick? They didn't, actually. It's not what they called us now. So it must have been pretty short notice, because they've only just told us. Yes, I thought they'd have given us a little more notice. Seems unusual. Sort of leaving us late as that, doesn't it? If you ever had to do that, you know, work through the day. Yeah, it happened to me once, but I had plenty of notice of it, and I sort of sweated it out for about 20 minutes. Be pretty tired when he gets to Delhi, I would say. Oh, yes, he'll have done about, what, 14, 15 hours?
Ladies and gentlemen, we shall shortly be landing at Beirut Airport. The temperature on the ground is 66 degrees, and the local time is 10 minutes past 11. Would passengers leaving the aircraft at Beirut please ensure that they have all their personal belongings with them and have left nothing in the seat pockets or on the racks? We leave you here, and another crew takes over. So, on behalf of Captain Rodley and the crew, I would like to say goodbye and wish you a pleasant onward journey.
The landing is the most strenuous part of the whole flight. And, of course, it usually comes at the end of the day's work as well. But all our skill is required for this particular maneuver.
Right, the beacon just ahead now. So, we have the report to control, please. Coming out now. Beirut jet speed, bird 900 is BOD inbound for 18. Roger, understand, clear to land. Clear to land. Thank you. Landing check, please. Landing check coming up, gears going down. Altimeters are set to QNH your side, 1025. QNH this side, airfield 18 at Beirut. The yaw damper is out, stabilizer trim brakes off. Flaps you have at 40 at the moment, sir. Thank you. Leave them there. Roger. The gear is checked down with 3 green lights, 4 releases. Hydraulic pressure speeds checked here. Landing check speed, button for full flaps, sir. Thank you. All right, 600 feet, full flap, please. Full flaps going out, sir. Full flaps you have. You're all set to land. Standing by the landing lights.
Despite all the modern aids to bring an aircraft down through cloud or to land in fog, from about 200 feet downwards, it is very much a human operation, landing an aeroplane.
Thank you. Landing lights now. Landing lights going on.
At about 200 feet, the captain is watching his airspeed most carefully, aiming to achieve a particular target threshold speed. If his speed is a little low on the approach, he may touch down too early and perhaps short of the runway. If his speed is too great, he may touch down too far along the runway and perhaps overrun the far end. As he comes to the runway itself, he starts rounding out to make his landing, trying to judge his height by the lights on either side of the runway and the general impression of the runway ahead of him, rather than looking at any particular spot on the concrete.
All right, sir. 100 knots. 50 knots. Head next left, brake pressures are checked. The after landing check's coming up, flaps are up, speed brakes 0, anti-skids off, heater heaters 1, 2 off, Q heat 1 off and checked, window heats off, defog detect, transponders to standby, anti-icing checked off please, checked off, boost pumps off, fuel heats off. Fine, thank you.
Have you anything, sir, to declare for the custom?
Nothing at all,
Nothing,
man.
absolutely.
Good morning to you, Captain.
Good evening. Oh, good morning, yes. Good morning.
You had a nice trip, sir?
Very, very fine indeed, thank you.
If you don't mind to sign here. Your room number is 703.
703, thank you.
Yes. وصل للكابتن على الصالة immediately.
It may seem odd that the captain stays in one hotel and the rest of the crew stay in another. It's one of those traditions which has grown up through the years.
Yes, you want that back? You're cheating, right? Why
The pilot's profession is the most satisfying one in the world because in no other profession can you start a plan and see it through completely to finish in a matter of hours. The job starts with a phone call first thing in the morning, and then there are decisions during the day. And by the time one gets to the hotel in the evening, the whole thing has been tied up. There are no loose ends.
How long do we have to stay in a slip station? It's a policy of B.O.A.C. that we fly only one type of aircraft. And in my view, with the complexity of modern aeroplanes, this is a very sound policy. This means that a Boeing 707 crew must wait for the next Boeing 707 to come through. If the service is twice a week, we have to stay there 3 or 4 days. If it's a weekly service, we're stuck there for a week.
Of course, in BEA, we definitely feel the polar relation. B.O.A.C, for instance, they go abroad to warm climates, swim in, work for 2 weeks, then come home, have a week off. You can tell the B.O.A.C pilots by their gardens down here. We in BEA, for example, work pretty well every day. A typical 2 days' work for me is drive to the airport, get to the airport, brief in, up to Glasgow, an hour on the ground at Glasgow, back to London, an hour on the ground at London, up to Glasgow again, spend the night in Glasgow in a British hotel, get up early in the morning, back to the airport, Glasgow to London, hour on the ground at London, then London to Belfast, hour on the ground at Belfast, back to London, finish for the day. Arrive home, a friend of my wife here says, "Oh, where have you been?" I say, "Glasgow, Belfast." Romantic, isn't it?
I joined BA in the first instance because I didn't feel like flying away for 17 days or 3 weeks or whatever it might happen to be, in view of the fact that I just got married at that time. I now find myself working virtually a 5-day week, and a day's work might well consist of flying to Belfast in the morning, back to London, and then up to Edinburgh and back in the afternoon. The weather in England being what it is, of course, one finds one is making instrument approaches in poor weather at Belfast and at London and at Edinburgh and back at London again in the afternoon, so that in the course of a short space of time, one has put in plenty of practice this sort of thing. One is therefore somewhat envious of B.O.A.C, whom one pictures flying away into the bright sunshine towards some palm-covered island in the Pacific or somewhere like that, where everything is on their side from a flying point of view.
Of course, you don't have to work for either corporation. There are plenty of British pilots with independent airlines, where you have both short and long-haul flying.
I've no regrets at all about being an independent airline pilot. It was 13 years ago that I arrived in the United Kingdom from Australia, and having joined the parent company of British United Airways and worked in the independent field, I wouldn't join the corporations now for all the tea in China. In my present position as a senior captain, there's no doubt about it that I'd be earning a lot more money. But still, I feel that the atmosphere and the feelings in the company, it's not worth more than money, but it certainly has compensated me.
I could have gone to one of the state corporations 15 years ago. I certainly would have been earning more money than I am now, but I wouldn't have missed the last 15 years with an independent like B.O.A. Always being in at the heart of things, always being in the management's financial confidence.
In the corporations, we have security and a good pension. The rule now is that we can retire at 50, we must retire at 55. But on the other hand, promotion is slower in the corporations.
To the States about a year ago.
Well, we've had a very good trip so far. Been out to Singapore and got in from Delhi last night. No takeoffs and landings, of course, yet, all night flying.
No, I haven't had any myself this trip. Very pleasant trip, I must admit, but as you say, no takeoffs and landings. Still, does it worry you?
Well, I don't know, really. I suppose it does, you know, in that we've been flying now for 6 years and I'm not touching the controls of the aircraft, really.
Still, there's no getting depressed about it. It's like this question of, you know, whether you will ever become a skipper or not.
I think the chances of us getting command, you know, are very slim now, really. I don't really worry about it very much. I know.
No point in worrying about it. No. None at all. I think you've got a good job here. We've both got good jobs, well paid, thoroughly enjoyable, and if you start worrying about not being a captain, it takes all the fun out of the job.
We're
paid according to the type of aircraft that we happen to be flying at the time. To quote some figures for BEA captains, an average Viscount captain would earn about 3,000 a year. A Vanguard captain, about 3,600, and a Comet captain, 4,100, rising to a maximum of 4,400. For some strange reason, Comet pilots in B.O.A.C. earn 4,700, £300 more than our maximum, and I'm told a Boeing 707 captain can earn up to 5,000 a year. The type of airplane you fly depends upon your seniority.
We have the seniority system because it's the only fair one. I think in principle the pilots would prefer a system based on ability and merit, but only if God were doing the selecting. They wouldn't trust anyone else, so we have the seniority system.
I don't support a rigid seniority system. I think it's stultifying and tends to kill initiative and enthusiasm. And I know of no other profession where if you keep your nose clean for 20 years, you're vomited out on the top.
For example, if we want 20 new Comet captains tomorrow, we can only fill these vacancies by selecting the most senior Vanguard captains who apply. This in turn creates vacancies in the Vanguard flight, which can only be filled by the most senior applicants from the Viscount flight. This in turn means that we've got to create 20 more Viscount captains, and this would probably mean promoting 20 first officers to captain. But again, the most senior first officers ready to fill this gap would be found in the Comet flight. And in this way, you see, there is a complete chain reaction of retraining all these individuals. Now, this is incredibly expensive. With the introduction of the Trident aircraft, which we shall be getting in the next year or two, we believe that the total cost of this retraining program could amount to about £9 million. I think for an individual pilot it can be about £9,000.
We've got it down on the Comet to 4 basic tables. The first one...
Of course, this is rather different in the Vanguard from the Viscount in that it's a two-stage start. Two lights. Ignited lights are on. Start your stopwatch. And after 3 to 5 seconds, the captain opens the HP valve. And there, you notice the TGT comes up much more quickly than on the Viscount. RPM's building up slowly.
Yes.
Oil pressure's rising slowly. The red warning light will go out when the pressure reaches 30 pounds.
Start fuel lever to normal at this stage?
Not until the LP RPM has reached 2,500.
It's not just the thought of a higher salary that makes a pilot apply for conversion to a new type. Some of us like the challenge it offers. For example, in B.O.A.C, many of us were reluctant to leave the Comet. But we went on the 707 simply because it was new.
Having survived a long conversion course lasting 7, 8, or 9 weeks, the Ministry of Aviation then stamp your license, entitling you to fly that particular type of aircraft. But life is not easy thereafter. Every 3 months or so, one has to undergo further tests to prove that you're still competent to fly this particular type of aircraft. 2 of these tests each year are conducted in a black box, which we call the simulator. In this, one practices instrument flying and demonstrates one's ability to cope with various emergency situations, such as an engine catching on fire, or an explosive decompression of the cabin, or something of this nature.
Airspeed is rising. $85, 95, 105, rotate.
Fine number 1. Fire drill number 1, please. Roger.
Flaps.
Number 2 engine is failing.
Feather number 2, please.
It is, of course, a disadvantage to only have a 6 months lease on one's career. But the checking is absolutely essential, in my opinion, for safety. And pilots welcome it at times because it gives them practice in procedures that they wouldn't otherwise get an opportunity to practice.
Well, thank you very much. The first officer's checks I'll do at 11 o'clock. So if you could be here by 10:30 for briefing, that's fine. Thanks very much. Now, Don, how do you enjoy that?
Thank goodness that's only happening twice a year.
Well, it's quite a good one, actually. A good airways trace, right round the markers. The interception at the ILS was very good. You were a little slow, I thought, in counteracting the southerly drift on finals, but you got right back in the beam before the middle marker, and that was great. Good. Very nice. Just a few points about those engine cuts on takeoff.
Yes.
When I gave you an engine firing number 1, you were a little bit slow to react, I thought, and you swung about 5 degrees.
Yes.
In itself, not serious, but just a point. When I failed number 2 as well, you coped very well with that, straight as an arrow, picked it up right away, but could have been a little bit faster on the first one. Your engine out climbing speed was a little high. Yes. Only about 4 knots. You may think I'm being academic, but you've got to remember that you might have a maximum weight takeoff somewhere like Malta with high ambient temperatures, and you are cutting into your margins if your engine out climb speed is high.
Yes, I appreciate that.
Twice a year, one undergoes what is known as a route check. This is a normal passenger-carrying flight, but with a rather severe route check captain breathing down your neck and watching to see that you do everything according to the book. In addition to this, we have 2 medical examinations each year. These are exacting and not a little nerve-wracking, I may say.
Well, Captain, your blood pressure's a bit up today compared to what it was 6 months ago. I think you must take off some of this flipping weight.
The medical exam is disturbing, but since we've introduced a system of loss of license insurance, the pilot's blood pressure at the medical has gone down considerably.
And in addition to this, we have one survival test, as it is called, each year. This consists of demonstrating that one knows where all the emergency equipment is kept on the aircraft and that you know how to get yourself and your passengers out of an aircraft should it meet with any disaster.
Sit on the floor, put your hands in your lap, slide on your bottoms with your feet up. We do not, repeat, not take shoes off.
In this way, as you will see, one is kept pretty busy in the course of a year, and at the end of 12 months, one feels well and truly checked.
The safety regulations applied by the ministry are exactly the same for any airline. This applies to pilot qualification, 6 monthly checks, emergency drills, ditching drills, overhaul of aircraft, and maintenance, whether it's a very large or a very small company.
In British United, we have no simulators, so we do our checking in the air, and the training captain flies with us as co-pilot. It doesn't matter how long you've been at the game, you still have to be checked every 6 months, just the same.
This exercise is 100 knots, V2 110. As we climb away, we will have simulated fire in another engine.
Charles, I take it I can use you as an ordinary first officer. I can ask you to call the failed engine in the usual way.
This is so. In the normal method, I will be a competent first officer for you, obeying your instructions completely.
Airspeed, torque, RPM, temperature's okay, pressures 70, 80, 90. Number 4 torque is fluctuating.
Number 4, Otter Feather. Number 4, Otter Feather. B1, Vito.
Gear up.
Brakes, gear up. Gear retracting normally. Number 3's on fire, Captain.
Fire drill number 3 engine.
LP cock is closed. Fire extinguisher. Number 3. Feathered and normal.
Bravo Yankee is climbing straight ahead, turning left, 180, Bravo Yankee.
$700 feet. $600 feet. 500 feet.
Critical height.
Minimum height.
Flaps up. Full power.
Full power, flaps. Undercarriage is retracting. Airspeed 140.
It is the law, and the law is right, that a pilot should be checked twice per year. I am a training captain. I also have to be checked. Like anyone else, I can make mistakes.
It must seem very nice to be sitting on the beach in the sun when England is plunged into the depths of winter. And of course, when the pilot first arrives at a slip station, he wants to rest. But after this, it's a complete waste of his time. He doesn't want to be there. Pilots get no satisfaction from their job if the airline for which they're working is not making a profit. It's possible on a flight of about 12 days that the pilot is only being employed productively on 4 of them. The other 8 days is just sitting around, wasting his time and his employers.
Supersonic. I'd like to see them get vertical takeoff really wrapped up before we bother about breaking Mach 1.
British pilots are not allowed to drink within 8 hours before takeoff. To us in B.A., this often means we might not be able to have a drink for a week in the pool or on standbys. On standby, I might go into the airport at 2 o'clock. My wife expects me home for dinner at 9 o'clock. I might appear 5 days later. This makes life very difficult to make any social arrangements.
There are 2 schools of thought about this long and short haul. There are a certain amount of people in B.A. like myself. I prefer the longer stuff. I much prefer to come down here. I like to come down to Beirut and Cyprus and places like that. But we have a lot of people in B.A. Who spend a lot of time on the domestic routes who quite like them. Mind you, we also have a lot of people in B.A. that don't like them very much as well.
How do you like the Comet?
Oh, very much. There's no doubt about it. I think that this is a pilot's aeroplane.
Yes.
Because you were on the original Comet 1, weren't you?
Yes. Yes, it was a fine period of my life. I really enjoyed that.
The Comet 1 was years ahead of its time, and but for a problem that was outside the knowledge that we had at that time, we should have swept the world with jet aircraft, and it's probable that the world would now be flying British jet aircraft rather than American. As it was, we paid the price of pioneering, and it was the rest of the world, and especially the American manufacturers, who benefited from the problems that we solved over the disasters of the Comet.
We've got good comets now, but in producing them, in the time, we've lost the lead.
Where do we stand now? Well, there's one field in which Britain again leads the world, automatic landing.
At present, the actual landing can only be carried out by visual reference to the runway. This is a weak link in our chain of operation because when the visibility is below limits, we're forced to land elsewhere at immense cost and inconvenience. Now the Trident, which will be coming into service shortly, will be fitted with fully automatic landing equipment. And during the next few years, we shall be working up to the stage where the pilot lets a black box bring the aircraft right down onto the runway.
Well, John, as you know, pilots are a pretty conservative bunch, and it'll take a bit of selling in the early stages. And, of course, you always get the chap who wants to know what happens if you get a failure.
Should I say when you get a failure? Yes. They will occur, and everything in this aeroplane has been designed to deal just with this case. And to do that, everything is in triplicate. We have 3 engines, 3 hydraulic systems, 3 electrical systems, 3 radio altimeters, and 3 autopilots. And in fact, of course, the autopilot is capable of controlling the aeroplane very much more accurately and consistently than the human pilot.
The VC-10 is also designed for automatic landing. And during the next few years, we shall be developing this black box to the stage where it can be used in passenger service.
And the alternates, Karachi first? Yes? Excellent. And what about Calcutta? Good. Well, in that case, will you load us up to maximum landing weight at Delhi? Check, of course, that we're all right here for takeoff weight. Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening, Captain.
900 to Delhi, and we're going via Bahrain, 34,000 feet.
Yes, the winds will be from Beirut to Bahrain, westerly winds 20 knots.
For takeoff checks and plates, we've been cleared to go.
Right. Standard takeoff drill again, please.
Standard takeoff, sir. One power check.
Thanks.
Off. Airspeed both sides. 100 knots.
Flight control.
V1.
High thrust levers.
Rotate. V2. V2 plus 10.
Gear up.
Gears coming in. 400 feet.
20 flap.
20 flap. 1,000 feet.
95.
95. Beirut jet speedbird, 900, 2,000 feet at the climb out.
Our next step is supersonic, and I'd like to complete my career by going supersonic. But apart from this, I would also like to see attention paid and development done on making flying cheaper for the general public.
In my opinion, the British public want to get from A to B safely and cheaply. Speed isn't the main consideration.
Unfortunately, a vast amount of money and effort is going to be frittered away on this grand supersonic airliner, which we hear and see so much about. But that's I'm afraid, quite the wrong way. Development effort should really be aimed at making normal daily air travel safer and cheaper.
It's very depressing to go back into the cabin and see only 3 or 4 passengers there. No pilot likes to fly with small loads.
Let's face it, that I, as a pilot, would like to fly supersonic.
For my money, there's no place for a supersonic aircraft in BEA's operation.
The trouble with civil aviation today, it's become an international rat race. National prestige has got to be left out of it.
Vertical takeoff aircraft are the answer to all our problems. I'm afraid they won't be here in my flying career. I wish they were.
Pilots are the most conservative people on God's earth. They tend to resist change and are highly suspicious of any new device. We're going to be faced with exactly the same problem with automatic landing, but they'll like it in the end.
I have one ambition left, and that's to be an old man. And I welcome any black box that makes flying safer. But this is still the best computer in any aeroplane.